just see how many people turn up and then we can start. Hello, welcome, welcome. I'll remind you of the rules in a minute. See, where we go. Nice kitty, you look like you're ready for sport and active. You look like you're really like going for it. I really like that. Jacob, hi from Australia. G'day. We love a stereotype. That's technically just a stereotype, isn't it? I spent 6 months in Australia actually doing Starlight Express many years ago. Karen, hello, hi, nice to see you. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hiya, darling.
Hello, welcome, people. Antiquest, hi from Greece. Titsub, hello, my chat is a pop-up box. Oh, I didn't know that. Ember and S, hi Debs, hi everyone. Welcome, welcome. If you can all please keep your microphones on mute, write in the box, say hello, say what you want to say, ask any questions as we're going through, because we've got 3 quite interesting topics today. Firstly, I just want to talk about some rules. It's not a stereotype. All Aussies use good day instead of hello. Yeah, but I think we have to be very politically aware and sensitive, maybe more so than we used to have to be, which is not a bad thing. And, you know, people say it's a stereotype, don't do it. But of course, stereotypes came about because that's what everybody does. So it's difficult. Okay, so please, while you are, Saraswati says hello. So please make sure you are dressed. Please make sure you don't talk about anyone else on here. Please make sure that if you're going to say anything to anybody, it's a question about something they've just said. It's not about their looks or anything else as well. Their masturbation, yes, it has happened twice over the years. It really has. And I try and chuck them out and report them if I see it happening. Can I be nude if I keep my camera off? Sure. You keep it off, I don't care actually. It can be. It's just about not sharing. I say I'm sure you've all got lovely bits. I just don't want to see them, and nobody else wants to see them. This is not that sort of space, so that's not what this is for. And if you are a therapist, this isn't a place to get clients or meet people or try and tout for business as well. So that comes into it as well. So if everyone can just follow the basic principles of being kind and thoughtful. We're talking about 3 subjects. Tempest, I'm here, I'll even be awake soon. If you just got up, is it really early? It's quite late here. I started work at 7 this morning. My first client was at 7, so I'm a bit tired today. But it'll all be fine. It's 3 a.m. Jesus, that is 6 a.m., 3 a.m. Oh, I love you. You're very dedicated. Thank you. That's amazing. I really appreciate that. Really glad that you're here. It means a lot. Thank you. So, no nudity, nothing else as well. And if you've got anything to say, please write it in your pop-up box on the right or the left, the top, the bottom, wherever you see it. Okay, so we're talking about 3 subjects today. We're talking about disability and kink. And then we're going to talk about mismatches in kink desire or kink timings or different things, but we'll have a look at about exactly what people mean by that when we get there. And we're going to be talking about cuckqueaning, cuckolding, stags, vixens, that sort of thing. And if you think, what the fuck are you talking about? Well, then we'll find out a little bit later as well. Next week, we've got different subjects completely. It's quite cool. So next week, we're going to start with predators on the scene. Oh, that's quite a difficult one, isn't it? So we're going to talk about predators. We're going to talk about when things go wrong. What can we do? What options are there? We talk about self-policing the scene quite a lot. Then we're going to talk about mentoring. I asked, next week is fully booked. The week after has one, Jacob, if you're just asking. So drop me a line. It'll happen in 2 weeks. So next week, we're talking about predators on the scene, networks. What can we do? What are our options? And even legally, actually, we can even go into that a little bit. We're going to talk about mentoring. I asked 2 questions last week, which got people really riled up on FetLife about mentoring. I put should, because that was the way the question was worded. And whew, got some personal insults. It was really interesting how people responded about what mentoring should look like. Should it, should it be gender specific or not? Should it be side of the slash specific or not? And by side of the slash, I mean, tops, bottoms, switches, different people that we are. And then we're going to talk about navigating submission and self-care. So how to keep that balance. So how to look after someone who is submissive, how to look after yourself, and how to hold boundaries. We'll be talking about a lot of that. And then the week after that, the first topic we've got is male chastity, being locked up, and even castration and castration fantasies. I don't know if you saw recently, there was somebody arrested for doing male castrations on line, and actually has just been arrested for it. It came up a few weeks ago. I don't know if you saw that. And they were even doing things like cooking, eating, but they were doing castrations online. And they had quite a few volunteers. It's a whole subgroup of people, not all subs, but you know what I mean, a subgroup of interest. So we'll talk about that as well. That's the week after. So if you want another subject, drop me a line, tell me, and we can cover it. Of course, I might not know it, so that's something else as well. No worries, Princess Alice. You're high, it's fine. Doesn't matter if you're late, just come on in. Right, so let's talk a little bit about disability and kink today. So when I ask a question, can I also make it clear nobody has to say me or not me, and nobody has to out themselves if they don't want to. So please be aware, please be present for yourself, and please be aware of your own, what might happen to you if you say yes or no to anything. So is anyone here classed as disabled or has a disability in any way, shape or form who's into kink? So does anyone have a disability who is into kink? Now, I'm going to be talking more about the UK, I guess. So yes, okay, so a fair few people, 3 mentally and physically to some degree, 2 people have said yes. I'm not saying names because that's up to them. I do, and my daddy does too. Yes, so there's a few yeses there, aren't there? Possibly, obviously, with my nickname, but yes, I'm a disabled woman and sub. Yeah, possibly with your nickname, for sure. But that could be wrong. You could be into roller derby. You could be into all sorts of stuff. So that's what I mean. We can't make assumptions as well. That's a big thing. Under the, in the UK, we have the Disability Act, the Equality Act 2010. And under that act, the way it works is that if you are classed as disabled, I mean, there are a lot of arguments as to whether we should say able-bodied, disabled. There are a lot of arguments as to what's correct. I'm glad it's at least got better than it used to be. And somebody else says, my partner has autism. I'm going through the diagnosis process at the moment. So under the 2010 Equalities Act, what we look at when we think of a disability, it is a physical or a mental impairment that has to have a long-lasting impact. It's a long-lasting impact, and what they mean by long-lasting is probably more than 12 months, roughly, and it has to impact you every day, how it defines disability. So it'll take you longer to do something like get your clothes on or get onto the train, or so it impacts your day-to-day life, and they want it to last for around 12 months or more. Progressive disabilities are covered. Mental health disabilities are covered as well. So it has to be substantial. That's one of the phrases that comes into it. So a substantial impact. So how much will it impact you trying to do some of those things? Progressive conditions are counted, but there are also quite a few conditions that are not counted at all under the Disability Act as well. So if you've got an addiction, or if you've got a problem, if you get cancer actually, and your cancer is short term, how do you ever know if your cancer is short term? It is not classed as a disability. You can't get a disability badge or get any help or payment or anything else as well. So disability needs a definition, and it needs a definition for this as well. However, there are also a hell of a lot of people who talk about being disabled without actually registering. It might be they've got some kind of mental health problem. It might be that they've got some physical problem that impacts them day to day, but they're not registered or don't get any help, because there are plenty of people who do that as well. So let's talk about disability and kink. So clearly there are 2 forms of disability that I'm kind of going to cover today, and that is the visible type and the not so visible type, invisible disabilities. There are a lot of arguments about this, aren't there, when that person drives up to the disabled space, gets out of their car and walks in. And there's a lot of arguments, aren't there, of like, what the fuck, you're not really disabled, you can walk, or you get up out of your wheelchair, well, you can fucking walk. So there's a lot of preconceived notions as to what a disability is. And so there are different types of disability, and under some of those we can have things like chronic illnesses, so the physical aspects where people are chronically ill, have chronic pain, or even trying to use the disabled loos. Yeah, agree, Princess Alice. Like, you know, actually you can buy a key to disabled loos on the internet. It's very easy to get. So I understand that people do get cross. I understand that it impacts people, but it does happen as well. So there are people with chronic illnesses, chronic conditions that maybe aren't as obvious. There are people with worsening aspects of their conditions as well. who aren't necessarily classified as disabled, but it's definitely something we would have to think about when we're negotiating kink, about how people see us and what we do. So visible means really obvious, and invisible means I don't understand where that's come from and I can't see it. If you really want to have a look, so there are quite a few websites that you can look at as far as disability goes and kink. So sexability.com is one. That's a great website that you can go and have a look at. And there are even specialist writers that talk about disability and kink. Even you just Google it and you have a look, it's out there, it really is. So is it .com? It's Sexability. Have a look and you'll find it. I think it might be .org nowadays. I might be wrong. And there are lots more toys and things being made for people with disabilities. In fact, there's a new aid out that came out, was it a year or so ago, 6 months ago, that is meant to hold sex toys in a certain way that won't hurt people. So if they've got like chronic pain or illnesses or different disabilities. So there are lots more things starting to be invented, starting to be used. So that's really cool. Let's talk about disability and kink. So for the people here, does sexability.org, thank you, really girl, I really appreciate that. So you can, there are access, there are things that you can do, there are resources that you can have a look at that can help you. Because it impacts sex, and of course it can impact feeling depending on what the person has got. So the first thing I'm going to say, if you meet somebody with any form of disability, ask them to tell you about their fucking disability. I mean, you can think, oh, I know everything there is to know about ME, I've got that. No, you haven't got their ME. I know everything there is to know about MS. Let's talk about something really different. Where would you access toys? What do you mean, Karen? What do you mean by that? So
I mean, like the ones you were talking about.
Oh, okay. I'll try and find. If you can just write in the side and mute, if that's okay, unless you have a problem and you can't type for any reason, of course, I will accommodate that. So sexability.org, places like that will help you. I wrote about the toy. I will try and find the link for you, the one that holds other toys like vibrators, masturbators, especially if people can't reach and do things. So I will find that one for you and I will put it out. urevolution.com, sexability issues. So there we go. Some people are putting up some nice links as well. So what do we mean by disability and kink? So again, there are different forms. So please ask the person you're about to play with. And I'm a bit of a fake here, so I don't have a disability. And so I'm talking about something that I don't suffer from. Do I have some chronic pain and some impact? Yes, I do. I do after having had chemo. There are definite aspects that stay with me, like my hands are weak, I get permanent hip pain, I get a permanent upset stomach. I could maybe apply for some things. I would actually, yeah, so you could. I don't have a disability. I don't have an invisible disability or an obvious disability. I do have some chronic pain. So I'm sitting here talking. So I'm really aware that although I have an expertise in certain areas, I don't have the lived experience. So I don't want to do anyone any disservice. So I would really appreciate your stories as well. Why do people with disabilities want kink? Because they fucking want kink. Because your sexuality and your desire has fuck all to do with whether you're disabled or not. And by disabled, I'm going to cover every term. It has nothing to do with it. So people honestly say, oh yeah, but that's treating disabled people like they maybe don't want to have, like they don't have a similar thought pattern or anything else as well. And just because somebody can't talk and can't communicate doesn't always mean that they don't have desires and their brain is completely and utterly functional. They just don't have the capacity to speak. So why do we assume all of these things? I think often people are frightened around disability, and certainly people are very frightened around kink and disability because the implication of doing it and not knowing how and what to do. And as Jacob says, same reason everyone else wants kink, tick. Princess Alice, because kink is fun, tick. Exactly. So it's an interesting assumption that we can make when we turn around and say, oh yeah, but you know, somebody wants kink and that's not right because they're disabled. I mean, fucking hell, people. There are some very strange myths around sexuality, around kink, and around disability. So I hope that we chuck a couple of those out today. I worked with people with severe learning disabilities. They had a very high sex drive. Yes, and some people do and some people don't. And of course, we also have to look at the danger of certain people's sex drives. So for example, there are certain disabilities that can increase people's sex drives, okay? Or it's not that it's increased the sex drive, it's the sex drive is high anyway, but their capacity to temper that or to be appropriate can also be hugely impacted. So we have to be very aware. Some people can also become hypersexual. Lance says, fibromyalgia completely changed the dynamic with my former sub, it's no joke. As in, they couldn't manage because they were in terrible pain and they couldn't manage things. So it was a negative impact, of course. So for those that don't know, fibromyalgia is a pain condition. It's about feeling pain. It's about being in a lot of pain. It's about pain, and it's a chronic condition, and everything can hurt, and it really impacts people. So the first thing you've got to do is ask the person about their disability from a safety perspective, the same as you would do. Karen says, I experience people freaking out with part of my condition. I'm really happy if you want to write down the side and share that, Karen, and it's really okay if you don't as well. So what we need to do is say to somebody, tell me what sort of kink you're into, tell me how to do it, and what does it look like? Because clearly, if somebody has some form of disability, it might impact the way they can be tied, the toys that can be used, and their capacity to tie up and use toys as well. So what I mean by that, so if we take fibromyalgia as an example, my daughter has fibromyalgia and she also has hypermobility spectrum disorder. So you might be able to bend her backwards and say, this is fantastic, look at the positions I can put her in, isn't this wonderful? And she might say, oh, I'm really loving this. But what we also need to ask and be very careful of is, what will cause long-term damage? What's the long-term implication here about what I'm about to do? Because a lot of subs want to please, of course, and say, yes, I'll do that, that's no problem. My daughter used to sit in the kitchen going, look, I can pull my foot right to my neck and whatever. And I'm like, would you stop that? Because actually it's going to cause her more harm than it is good. Tempest says, moderately severe spinal issues, degenerative, list of shit too long to type. I understand. Mobility and some neuropathic issues. However, got into kink when I was more well. Capacity to do everything is affected. So I think sometimes we don't have to think, can I do kink? What we've got to ask is, how can I do kink? Because I just need to do it differently. I need to think differently. And that's very important as well. Functional neurological disorder with non-epileptic seizures and seizures. So functional neurological disorder can have all sorts of implications. A lot of people mistake it for epilepsy, and some of the fits that people have the neurological impact when people are fitting, they can freeze, they can shake, they can have all sorts of different impacts. So what we need to do is understand each person's disability. That's what the most important things when it comes to kink. So we often think that, oh, someone's in a wheelchair, they don't feel below the waist, so how can they have sex? Well, ask the person, because that's not true for everybody in a wheelchair, by far, actually. And some people, there are different ways, and there are different ways to have orgasms. There are different ways, body orgasms, and the body is really clever. When one part of us isn't working or doesn't feel, other parts can compensate and do differently. So, and it's a crazy myth, isn't it, that somehow we turn and say people who have a disability are maybe not sexual or maybe not into kink. So we're talking about this. That's just not true, and that's not okay. We need to ask the person again, what is it you're into and how can I do these things? Do we have to think a little bit more carefully about how we're going to do things? Absolutely. However, I would argue the same for me after cancer. So I had all my lymph nodes taken out on my right side. If anyone's going to tie me or do things on the right, I'm a lot more conscious. If somebody wanted to pierce or do something on my right side, I'm a lot more conscious. I don't even let someone take blood pressure on my right side anymore. You take everything from the left. So where you hit me and what you do, I have numbness around my breast. I don't feel things in a certain way. So I need to be more careful about what's happening and how it happens, and I need to be more aware. So somebody who wants to do some kind of breast bondage or some breast torture, and I'm blindfolded, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to say, I want to be able to see, because I want to watch what's happening, and I want to see what that's like. Princess Alice, I have a list of my dad's medications and allergies on hand just in case medical assistance is needed. Yes, that's the other thing, isn't it? Be really aware about what the person needs. Have the numbers at hand of the sort of people that they talk to. So For example, some people who have certain conditions have a straight line into certain units in hospitals or have a certain specialist. Some people have a straight line into an emergency floor, or depending on the medications, they need to be taken somewhere else. There are hot medications that people carry heat cards for, which means that they need to be treated in a different way. So it's really worth trying to find out. So people have disabilities and fucking want kink. There is no right or wrong way to have sex or to do kink when you are with someone who has some form of disability. It's all about asking the person that question. How do you want to have sex? How do you want to do this? I don't know if Cosmic's actively listening or whether he's just recording, but I mean, I think he's one of the only people I know. I don't know if I should mention this in some respect, but this isn't about consent, this is about something else entirely. But he's one of the only people I know who has actually managed to suspend somebody outside in a wheelchair who wanted to be suspended. Couldn't come out of the wheelchair, but he managed to suspend the wheelchair and tip them slightly. So they had a very similar experience and feeling. So there are all sorts of things we can do. What we've got to think of is not, why can't I, is how can I? And that's a really important phrase, but it's understanding. So like, for example, if someone has a chronic condition, the amount of spoons they have, so people with disability talk about spoons, a finite amount of energy. If they put a lot of energy into a scene, they're going to be very exhausted afterwards, might need some very different aftercare. It's very important as well to think about neuropathy. It's very important, like if you're doing ropes and ties, to think about how people feel things, sensations, and the impact of doing that. It's really important. And it's really important to know what medications they're on, not just because of medical assistance, but because how will it impact the play that we're about to do. I take a 75 milligram aspirin every day. I used to be on blood thinners because I had 2 lung clots in each lung. You really need to know that I'm on blood thinners, because if you cut me, I'm going to bleed in a very different way to somebody who isn't. So we must ask about medication. We must ask about the side effects of medication. We must ask about what's going to happen. We can also think and avoid disability. I think people have said already, people go, oh, I'm going to freak out about your disability. So we have this concept that somehow someone with a disability is going to make a bad kink partner or be a dangerous kink partner, and that's just fucking bollocks as well, isn't it? That's just so not true. What I will say about anyone with a disability is they probably know their bodies better than most people. They know their limitations. They know what they can and can't do. And that's really important to work out as well. Alice says, it takes me over a week to recover from a trip to Lamb as it takes a lot out of me. Yeah, I agree. So you've got to work out, is it worth it? Is it, oh, thank you, Karis. Karis has put up the spoon theory. I really understand that. And it's hard, isn't it? So we've got to work out the cost and the benefit of doing different things. So we might have to plan differently. That's what's more important. Lance says, having a secondary safe word related to medical issues helps. Perfect example is limited mobility or neuropathy. Neuropathy, yes, I agree. So I'm just going to come on to that in a minute. How do we talk about things where we say maybe it's an amber, or it's a mental health amber, or it's a panic amber, or it's a physical amber, or it's something else as well, or it's a red? I want to carry on, but my arm is in a really bad position because I've got MS. So like, for example, on something like multiple sclerosis, people get so many different forms and versions of MS. And so I have a client who, if you touch his arm, he's in agony. Absolute agony. So if you were to just stroke or touch him, the brain causes a pattern and it's really, really, really painful. So to tie him or to do anything, you would think wouldn't help. In fact, the opposite is true for him. If you touch him and stroke him, he doesn't like it. But if you bound his arm, he feels safe and secure. The touch, the firmness of the touch makes a massive difference. So it's also really important. And don't forget, Roy, that when we're talking about medical issues, we don't just mean medical as in physical, we can also mean medical as in psychological, panic attacks or different things as well. Let me just go back a little bit. Yes, so true. Karen says, I have a physical disability. Stacey says, spina bifida, but I find my mental health a bigger challenge. Yes, it's all about what we see as a challenge and how that works. So that's important to communicate with people as well. And Princess Alice shared to Lance that Daddy and her use the colour blue for medical. Yes, so code blue is often medical, isn't it? Because it's blue flashing lights in most countries most of the time. So blue is quite a good one because it's really clear. Opal Fruit says, I did a tie on a Zimmer frame for an organisation that was about educating the carers of people with disabilities. That's so cool. Was it because they wanted to do kink? Was that what that was about, Opal Fruit? So you were teaching that that's possible and that's something that you can do. Getting people to accept hidden disabilities is a real challenge. Wheelie says that's a great idea, having a health disability related safe word. Yes, okay, so yes, it was for Opal Fruit as well. So, and that's important, isn't it? People have sexual and have kink desires. Not everybody mixes kink and sex. So they can be very separate, especially when we talk about rope and tying. That's not always sexual. There are clubs that just do ropes and tying. And actually people, like for example, with Parkinson's, people who are really shaking, sometimes the rope and the binding, because it binds and holds us, actually can really help them calm. And it can be a really good medical input for somebody. I have a whole workshop written on why we like tying, what that's about for us, maybe about swaddling. Babies and infants tend to sleep better when they're swaddled, when they can't move. And people who have disabilities with pain and different things can also feel very safe in a tie, in a swaddling impact. And that could be a vac bag, that could be pallet wrap. So anything that helps somebody calm. It's the same principle as Karis is saying with a weighted blanket. So for example, if you're doing something kinky, instead of having a weighted blanket for the night, you can be in a vac bed, if you can afford one, or a vac pack. And if you can't do that, there are also ways of tying people, binding people that make them feel very calm. There are different things that we can use to make people feel differently. And we can swaddle, and we can also use pallet wrap. Pallet wrap is like cling film, it's just a much bigger, and it comes in multiple colors, and it's heavier, it's thicker. That makes a difference. So yeah, that can really help as well, and it can really help some people feel safe and feel warm, and also feel like we're like everybody else. When you are reminded that you aren't like everybody else, that you aren't able-bodied, you aren't minded the way we think, in fact, it can be so comforting and warming and loving to know that we can still be sexual, that we can still have a good time, and it creates a real normality for people with disabilities. It's a really healthy thing for lots of people to do. So, and what you'll also find is what a lot of people do is if we connect people through their disability to their desire, they feel good. And they feel like they're part of something. So fuck, why wouldn't we encourage that? And Tempest just said yes. Was that to what I was saying, Tempest, or to the weighted blankets? So it's really important. Of course, if we have a disability, we have to think about the impact of bruising, marking, bleeding, choking, tying, all of those things. They have a real difference. But the other thing I would say, both, says Tempest, cool. And the other thing we need to think about as well for a lot of people with chronic pain conditions is that kink can be really helpful. Because of the way kink works with pain and the way it stimulates the brain, it can take some people with chronic pain's mind off of what their chronic pain, because we're creating a different pain. So people can really enjoy that. And it can be really handy. So when chronic pain takes over your life and you feel like you're losing yourself in it, your sex drive can drop. One of the ways to make yourself feel better is by having sex, ironically, even if your sex drive isn't as high, and by then also having pain mechanisms to help you. So Karen, you agree with that sometimes for you with your pain that actually it really helps. So but however, we get very binary in our thinking. We get very absolute of this person can do that and that person can do that, and that's all that they can do, and that's not true. So for chronic pain, it can be really good. There is peer-reviewed research. Lance, the old finishing on toes. Oh, sorry, that's really loud. That'd be Goose. Goose is talking. So stomp on your toes and asking, does your stomach still hurt? Exactly. I mean, I'm not advocating that. You think I'll give you fucking something to cry about, whack, that old-fashioned discipline thing, and it does actually. So if you want to read any of the research, Emma Shepherd did a peer-reviewed piece of research, and she looked into chronic pain, and she took people's testimonies and was asking them how it helps and what it does. So chosen pain can be predictable, controllable, can be enjoyable. Unpredictable, involuntary chronic pain means we feel powerless. So sometimes when people choose pain, they feel better. And then the danger is if we go into a psychological world where people say, well, why do you choose pain? You shouldn't be doing that. And we clinically talk about them not being safe or not being okay. In fact, the opposite is true. So we really need to understand that when people choose pain, it's because we can control within reason. Goose says hi back, Karis. So, and it's really important. So there's a lot of neuroscience as well that really impacts how we play and what we do. So if our nervous system is covered in all sorts of different nerve endings that recognize different things that are happening to our bodies at different times, the brain detects pain. So if you have a chronic pain condition and the way it's working all the way through, your nervous system is disrupted or changed when it responds to acute pain. So because we get some acute pain, it disrupts the way our nervous system is experiencing that pain in that moment. And that can feel really good. That can feel really good for people. So that's really worth thinking about as well. And also for some people, when you've got some form of sensitivity or not so much feeling and they need a stronger touch, it can feel really good. Lance says, one friend used to say, there is no pain to strong sensation and you can choose how much sensation you want. And that's actually, neuroscientifically, that's not actually that off. And it's really important to remember, because when somebody does experience a lot of pain, they might want to have a different sensation, whether that's pain or something else as well. Shocks of temperatures, different things, because all of those are about sensations. So if we have a different feeling and a different response, well, we can ground ourselves and feel better for that. And that's, I think that's magic for anybody with a disability. Why wouldn't anybody want that? For people with mental health conditions, of course, we have to make sure that people can clearly look at consent. So some people who are maybe very traumatized, I got told off for this the other day, but I'm not going to change my mind on it. We need to make sure that the person is present. They're not fawning. They're not saying yes because they just want to say yes, because they want intensity and a connection. So we need to make sure that we are both safe. We need to establish safe words, a grounding, a good place within which to work, within which to play. So all conditions, their capacity to consent. I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago on littles, and it isn't just about littles. It's about capacity to consent. I've got a huge writing on consent, Jacob. It would take forever. That's a whole workshop. But our capacity to consent is in the moment, and it's in our brains as well. So how present am I? What's going on for me at the moment? Have I had a good day? Have I had a bad day? Am I in a falling place? Is my trauma flaring up today? It's a huge, it takes forever, doesn't it? So what drugs have I been taking, recreationally or otherwise? Have I had a bad day at work? Does that impact? Do I need to play? Do I need you to play with me because it's just going to help with my pain sensations at the moment? No, people with a disability might not have a reduced capacity. Humans will have a fucking reduced capacity. This isn't just about disability. It's because we happen to be talking about it. Every fucking person could have reduced capacity. That said, however, depending on the disability, yes. So if you're talking about people with who have educational difficulties or impaired learning difficulties, their capacity to consent is not the same as yours or mine. If your brain is educationally here. So if you have somebody, so I have a friend with a son who has Downs and he's pretty bad, and he couldn't consent to any of this. He wouldn't understand it. So it'd be absolutely inappropriate. And for example, alcohol is a perfect example of reduced capacity if they're drunk. So we can take things and do different things for sure. Also important to note each day how individual is. Yes, I agree with that as well. Because somebody who's in an awful lot of pain, you might say, well, let me help you. We can really sort that today. And it's like, no, I don't have the spoons though. So there's a different aspect. So yes, some people with disabilities will have less capacity to consent. There's a truth in that, especially if they're So I'm not talking necessarily about a physical disability there. I'm talking about a different, so like, as I say, something that impairs learning age. So there are a lot of people out there who have a mental age or a mental awareness of a lot younger than they actually are. I don't care if they're 20, I don't care if they're 40. If their learning age is 12, you don't fucking play with them. That is not negotiable. Nobody should think that that's okay. So yeah, so I understand that some people get really offended when I say something like that. And this is the group that I'm talking about. So that's really important as well. Or communication impairment. Well, a communication impairment might be difficult, but then find a different way to communicate. Because if the person's brain is really good and they just can't talk, well, you're going to have to take it slow. Whether they use a machine, whether they can write, whether they can blink or nod, we can all do different things so we can consent if our brain has the capacity to consent. If our learning age isn't impacted or impaired in any way. So someone needs to be able to consent. So we still have to think about that when it comes to disability, because not everybody has an equal disability. That's why I'm saying it's really important. And you can find out pretty quickly, can't you, whether someone's capable of consenting or not, like whether they're drunk, whether they're drugged, whether they're socially or learning impaired. I fucking hate these words because they just make people into something they're not. So, for example, if you live with a serious PTSD, I would really want to make sure that you know what you're getting into. I would also want to ask you very carefully, hey, you know, would this trigger you in any way? I understand you are responsible for your triggers. I'm not trying to pathologize you in any way. And I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing should something go wrong. Somebody came in months and months and months ago. Some people will remember them, some people won't. And they said that their PTSD means that when they are hurt, they tend to punch or kick or hurt the person that's doing that to them. I would not want to play in that circumstance because they can't control that. They're going to hurt me potentially. And they said, well, you saying I shouldn't play then? And actually, in the end, because of their attitude, and I don't know if anyone remembers this person, but I said, yeah, because you're a danger to others. I also work with some people. So, for example, for one of the first times in years, I said to somebody, I mentioned this last week, who isn't in an adult space at all at the moment and just says yes because they want to please and then always regrets what they do. I have suggested that they don't play until they sort out what's going on in their mind, because they are a danger to themselves and others. So sometimes I think that's a really important thing to pick up. Learning difficulties can also use words in a way we don't, might say that they had sex, but actually they had a damn good snog. Yes, and that's really important, Karen, isn't it? Like when couples come and see me or polycules come and see me, one of the things we spend a lot of time doing is discussing words. So I want loyalty. What does that mean? I know what it means to me. I know what it says in the dictionary, but I don't know what it means to you, and I don't know what it means to you. So let's agree what the words mean. So for example, somebody who's stuck in a very young age might say they want special cuddles. What does that mean? They might say they want sex when they just mean cuddles. They just want to make out. They just want to have a damn good snog. What does it look like? So please make sure you find out as well, some things as well. So like, for example, if you're with somebody older and they maybe have a stroke or they have some form of neurological disorders or like Alzheimer's. So some people could become hypersexualized. It doesn't actually mean that they're consenting, they're hypersexualized. And that's really hypersexual, sorry. So that could be really dangerous because you think, oh, great, this is wonderful. It's the impact on the brain that's changed them. It doesn't mean they actually want to do those things. So again, please look at each individual, find out, ask the person, and then ask the person, are they consenting here? What does that mean? Whether they are randy. But what does randy mean? You know, like for some, being randy if you're a kid is just having a snog. As Karen said, Lance says, defining vocabulary is great. Never thought of that. But an example, randy in the US usually means a name, not horny. Exactly. And if we use the word fanny in America and in the UK, they mean totally different things. If we look, all things have different meanings. So it's really important to talk about what we mean by defining vocabulary. I can't tell you how much I rant on about that one. So I think as well, what's really important, especially if there are disabilities involved, is for fuck's sake, please make sure fanny is front bottom. Yeah, it's also a name. Your fanny, cunt, vagina. Vagina is an interesting word. Vulva, that sort of area. So yeah, but also like fanny packs. So you have the packs. We talk about those quite a lot as well, but we don't call them fanny pack so much. Certainly not in the UK. We call them bum bags. So a bum bag that goes around the front, but your bum is in the back. So yes, that's a really good example of how the hell do we do it as well. Can I also really, really be clear about this? The research, Volvo, yeah, whatever gives you the most comfortable, safest ride. I can't believe I said that, but hey, you know, you've got to find a joke where there is one. Good safety bags, not me, the Volvo, actually, and me. Let's get on to the normal stuff quick. So what we've also got to be really careful about, for fuck's sake, is trust. Because when somebody has a physical disability or a mental disability of any way, shape or form, still thinking about my fun bags. So we've got to be really careful, because assault against people with disabilities or intellectual disabilities. So for example, if you have somebody who is disabled and a woman, sorry, I'm just going to talk about women for a second, because I really understand that the research is cis-based, so I apologize, I really do, and that is what it is. So yeah, says Coca family, yeah, sorry about that, I won't show them. Right, so what we've got to think about as well, so when you have assaults happening, what they found in 2018 was that the assault rate for somebody who has some form of disability and is a woman is 12 times higher than somebody who is not disabled. 12 times higher. 12. Get your head around that one. It's fucking horrific. So we have to be really careful about trust, because the capacity to be violent or aggressive or to be non-consensual against somebody with a disability is 12 times higher. So there can be a lot of damage caused as well, because maybe someone can't move, can't think in the same way, doesn't understand what's happening in the same way. 12 times higher, and that's from 2018. So please really think about that. It makes a difference. So if you're going to talk to somebody and you want to play, fucking hell, have a great time, whether somebody has a disability or not. Don't forget to look through the disability, but at the same time, please ask about the disability. Jerry, I've been dealing with plumbers. They just left. So I've missed most of what you said. Is tapioning still running outside us? I don't know. Sorry. Maybe someone could look that up if they feel like it. So it's really important that in kinky and queer spaces that we really think about that as well. And also just even accessing parties, being able to come in, being able to get around in parties. And that's really difficult. So we have to be really careful about making sure that people have access. So like, for example, at London Alternative Market, there's a lift to get up and down. But for fuck's sake, that lift breaks so often. But we've done things like help carry people up and downstairs, all sorts of stuff to try and make a difference. So what we're talking about here isn't really a no, as I've said, it's just about reframing it. How do we do it differently? What are the options? Shout out to the Lamb crew for the help, because you know what we're talking about. So I do think you have to think about that. You have to think like, kink is invading mainstream. You know, if you think about 50 Shades of crayfish, for fuck's sake, what is wrong with my brain today? If you think about 50 Shades of Grey and the impact that it had, it means kink is more popular, it's more widestream, it's kind of everywhere, isn't it? It's mainstream culture that it's flooding into. So, which means people, non-normative, disabled, whatever you want to say, also want to fucking get into it, because everyone has a sex drive of some kind, even if it's at zero. My sex drive is zero. Okay, so let's invite people in and work out how we can do it as well. As I say, BDSM, it's just about accommodating differences. It's about being able to talk to somebody and saying, okay, how can I help you? And I will also argue that it's a really good way of inverting social dynamics and putting things on their head, because while that person in that chair or in their mind is seen as not okay, when we do something kinky together, we invert that. I know, very interesting nipple clamps. We can invert that and make a very big political difference, because we take that person as they are and we see them as a sexual being, we see them as a kinky being, and we fucking get on with it. So there's something really magic about that as well. So, and there are loads of, like, I know Lamb has done them as well, like workshops on how to manage, public workshops, how to do BDSM play with disabilities. Princess Alice, I've even helped a partially sighted woman get around at Lamb before. Thanks for that, Jerry. Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? So a lot of people are already members of our community as well, as you can tell by everyone that's here. So let's have a look at how to do it instead of whether we should or shouldn't, and take someone, understand their disability. There is some research happening more around this, especially around chronic pain and dealing with chronic pain as well. And that's very good. Okay, anyone got anything else to say about disability and kink? Anything else you want to add? Anything I've missed? It's only very short. We could go on about a workshop on all the how-tos then as well, which could take years. But that's just a small introduction. So I hope that that's helped in some way, shape or form. And there are all sorts of things. Also, what I will say is if you go to a kink event and you have a disability, talk to the people. I'm going to turn whoever mic that is off. Talk to the people. Sorry, I'll just turn that off. Talk to the people who make toys, because they can make things for you. If you turn around and you were at somewhere like London Alternative Market or anywhere else as well in the world, if you go and talk to people like, I've got this problem, how could you adapt this so I could use it? How could you put a strap around it? How could you change it? So it's a really good idea. Bad visual, blind on with a flog on the sub calling out more to the left. But no, that's a great visual, isn't it? Well, let's change. Let's say that they're blind and they don't use a flogger. Let's say that they use a vampire glove because they can touch and scratch. Let's say they use scrapers, metal scrapers. Let's say that they can hit, they feel with one hand and hit with the other hand below. There are fucking thousands of ways of adapting every single thing that we do. And we do have disabled traders at Lamb. So they will, we have mentally and physically, so, and emotionally. So it's really worth talking to these people, not just at Lamb, but anywhere else, and say, how would you make this? What can I get? I have this problem. Can you help me? And I'll tell you what, some of them who make their own ties would fucking love that challenge. And they would really come up into it because it's such an accepting space. I think kinksters can talk differently often about problems and situations. Goose might bark because Luna's barking outside, so I apologise if she does. Thank God you don't play, hey? I say that every week when the dog barks. Okay, so if we're kind of done with that, let's go on to desire differences. Most of them love a challenge. They really do, don't they? Most traders will, like, can you make something for me? I kind of want this. And things like electrical play is so easy to do, because sometimes, especially if you've got like a profs box, it is just about touch and someone else holding something or having it somewhere attached to them. So there's so many things that you can adapt and use really brilliantly. All you've got to do is understand the other person's impact, what it means and what sort of aftercare they want. Make sure you know where their meds are, make sure you understand, make sure you can call the right people at the right time. I really think people should practice that sort of thing. And please don't play impaired. I'm always going to say that. Don't drink, don't drug, don't drink in kink, don't drug in kink. My supervisor was asking me the other day, he's doing a talk for Tashra on chemical aspects of play in kink as well, and we were talking about it a little bit by email because he was saying, what do you think? And I was saying, I think some kinksters specifically want to do drugs and play, and most people will leave it alone, but there is a small subgroup that look at some form of drug-induced play or drug-induced change to their play, because clearly we want different stimulation. But it's important that we stay as sober as we can so we can make the right decisions for safety. We have the capacity to phone someone, we have the capacity to do something. The last time somebody got killed because of kink, who wasn't a murderer because of an accident, was because he was so fucking drunk that he walked away and left her strangled and went for a walk because he couldn't get his head around the fact that he might have killed someone, and he was totally pissed. No, I'm sorry, please don't drink and kink, please don't drug and kink. I understand the difference of fantasies and different things, but it's really important. Okay, so let's talk about sex drive differences, and let's talk about kink drive differences. What does everybody understand by sex drive or kink? So what are your understandings? What are your understandings on that? Libido, sex drive. What do you think about that? And do you think libido is connected to drive to play? What do you think about those things? So a person's libido is motivating force, urge, says Jacob. Yeah, can be, can't it? It's how often, how much you want to play or have sex depends, different people to person to person. Yeah, says Lance. Yeah, they're all absolutely right answers, aren't they? So it's about our desire. So our libido is about our desire, whether we want to engage in some kind of sexual activity or not. What's a normal sex drive and what's a normal play drive? Jesus, those things are really hard to work out. They can depend on all sorts of things. They can depend on our physical health. It can depend on our mental health. The more we exercise, the more likely we are to want sex. Actually, statistically, that's true. Depends on how they experience play. Yeah, that's true as well. Some drugs can cause an increase in libido and then a decrease when we stop taking them. So when you take a stimulant drug like cocaine or LSD, something, or speed, we can like, fuck, I really want to do these things now. And you can have the most amazing sex and play on them. And then your crash is really bad afterwards and you can't replay the level of that play. Because it was intense and because it was drug fueled. So we can't do it as well. When we have changes in our neurotransmitters, so like if we have things like Parkinson's, we might need dopamine replacement therapy. That can cause things like hypersexuality. We were talking last week about ADHD. And the impact that dopamine has. So a lot of dopamine actually can cause sexual compulsions. So that's something to think about as well, our neurotransmitters, how we are, what's happening, and what illnesses we have. And the other thing to think about is, of course, mental health. So things like depression, anxiety, stress can cause a decrease in our sex drive as well. Again, that's quite drug related, isn't it? What you will find as well, 2% of, Karen, this is brilliant. Oh, thanks. Thank you very much. It's very nice of you to say. 2% of cis-born men in the country, in the UK at the moment, have testosterone deficiencies. Now, you would think that's just older men. That's not the case. And it's actually increasing. Testosterone is on the decrease at the moment in men. So there's a lot of research into that. Why is that? What's happening? So we really need to look at that because testosterone can really make a difference as well. Yeah, I'm going to come on to that in a minute, Beatrice. I am. So, right. So why would we have a lower sex drive? What would happen? So it could be that, so one of the classics is menopause, menopausal time. For cis-born women, your menopause often, for some, sexual hormones themselves actually decrease. Oh, was the ADHD one recorded? Yeah, I'm pretty sure Lemuria recorded it. So it's worth looking at. So it can cause a decline. For other women, it can cause an increase and they can get wetter. Some women get drier. So again, it's really important to try and say to the person who's having the menopause, how is it impacting your sex drive? Also, some medical treatments can make a difference. Like, for example, cancer treatments can really dry you up and dry you out. The less sex you have. For some menopausal women, actually, as well, you can also have vaginal atrophy, which means that the vagina starts to tighten up and get smaller. So actually, if you're going through the menopause and you want to stay sexually active, get fucked or use a dildo. Keep using it because it can cause some issues. Again, not everybody all of the time, as Sunshine says, only for some. Of course, if we are really restricted by our culture and our religion, that may well impact our sex drive or it may increase it. So, oh no, I don't do those things. I can't. Or fuck, I really want to, for God's sake. So again, that's going to have a big increase on how we play and what we do. Culture and religion can make a really big difference. Our mental health makes a really big difference. For some people, so it depends on the mental health issue. So if we have anxiety and depression, on average, most people, most of the time, with a severe depression, their sex drive will go down, not all the time. Also, hypersex drive can be persistent genital arousal disorder. Yeah, that's a very uncomfortable position. I'll kind of come on to a few of those things that can happen to us as well. So we have to be really careful about our mental health as well. That can make a real difference. Our mental health can be hyper or hypo. So it can go very high or very low. Again, you need to ask the person what's happening for you here. Age, there is a definite decrease in libido for most people, most of the time, around the age of 60. Not for everybody all the time. Exactly, Lance. It's that stereotype, isn't it? Of, she went to a girls' boarding school, she was up for it all the time. whatever that means, which is a ridiculous statement. However, stereotypes do come from somewhere. There is a link between obesity and a lack of libido. That isn't true for everybody all the time. I'm saying there are links. Don't shoot me. There are links. I am obese. My sex drive is pretty high. I see out most partners within a year or two because they don't. I've got a high sex drive. I want sex regularly and pretty often, and lots of people keep up for a while. But when that initial new relationship energy wears off, I'm still wanting sex, and actually I find that people don't keep up, so it just depends. So that can make a difference as well. We've also got conditions that can impact our sex and our play drive as well. So that can be heart conditions, diabetes, blood pressure disorders, nerve damage in certain areas. We've also got things like that's especially around diabetes. We've also got psychological problems like vaginismus, dyspareunia. So vaginismus is when the vagina tightens up and can literally close. I mean, literally like closed. And very slowly we have to teach people and help them with the psychology of that to help them open up. And there's all sorts of toys and things that people can do. That can happen to anyone at any fucking time. Dyspareunia is really about pain, where the whole vulva can be really painful. And that can go from some kind of psychological intervention to medical interventions where, who's feeling a bit gory, where massive proportions of the vulva are actually shaved off to try and change the nerve endings and where they hit and what they do. If you have things like that, please make sure you see a psychosexual psychotherapist, somebody who's done a couple of years extra training, knows the ways to help and make a difference. So we can have sexual conditions as much as we can have anything else. Pregnancy, some people, when they're pregnant, oh my God, they want a lot of sex. And some people who are pregnant are like, don't ever touch me again. Ever again. Never going to happen. So again, that we know that's not the same as female circumcision. So that's when, so let's talk a bit about anatomy. It's almost like a test, isn't it? So you've got the vulva, which is the outside. So you've got the labia majora, the two bigger bits of filled skin around the outside. If I had a picture, I'd bring it up. And then you've got where the hood, the clitoris, and you've got the urethra, and you've got the vaginal opening. The labia here is often, for a lot of people with dyspareunia, is the bit that hurts. And female circumcision, your pass mark is 97%. Good luck, thanks. It is like a test, isn't it? So female circumcision is more about the clitoris and the hood. And however, everything can be cut and a lot of damage can be caused. So it's a different, that's female genital mutilation, very different. So whereas this is a medical approach to take off the outside of those two walls, if you like, and see if we can impact and change the nerve endings. It's not done often, but it can be done. Another thing that affects our sex drive is not having sex. The more you don't have sex, sometimes the less you want sex over a very long period of time. You might find you masturbate less. You might find you don't want those things. Okay. So I just had a private message. I don't know if it was meant to be private, but I'll read it. If your partner is older and has difficulty sexually, should I take a sexual deterrent secretly to ease my own sexual tension? No, absolutely not. Gosh, no. I'll come on to that in a minute. So I'm going to cover that slightly about the things that you can do. Please don't take things into your body that can impact your sex drive and your okayness. Please don't. That is never a good solution. We'll come on to that in a minute. So ironically, my next point was your relationship satisfaction, how we feel as a couple or as a throuple or as a polycule or as a single person about ourselves. So if you are happier in your relationship, your libido is likely to be higher. Not everybody all the time. So if you want to play or do something, that's more likely to happen. If, however, you are unhappy in your relationship, you are less likely to want to play or to have sex. However, if you are having an affair, you are more likely to have sex or play with your partner, because there's a lot of guilt, and a lot of people statistically then have sex or play with their partners because they feel bad about it. It's quite interesting, isn't it? So Medications, we're going to come on those things as well. So medications that can impact our sex drive and our play drive. The things that can happen to us, so I turn around and said, I say it all the time, I'm sorry, I know we're playing bingo, but chemotherapy is a huge one. Chemotherapy reduces testosterone, even in women as well, and it can also create menopause, which can potentially mean that the person doesn't want to have sex. Of course, if you have cancer in your cervix, vaginal cancer, anal cancer, they're going to impact your capacity to have sex, the pain that goes with it, and everything else as well. Antidepressants, depending on the antidepressant, they can have a really big impact. A lot of people talk about SSRIs impacting sex drive and our capacity to orgasm. Now, if you tie and play with sex, that's when you're going to have a problem potentially. So there are all sorts of different drugs on the market. Some do not impact your sex drive and your capacity to orgasm at all. So it's really important to go back and have a look. And someone just said, also true for multiple sclerosis, infusions, disease modifying therapies kill the drive. Yes, and that can happen with a lot of things, as you say, MS as well. I'm going through a couple of drugs. I think I covered that, but I won't come to that anymore. So anything that's put in your body can potentially impact your sex drive, especially if it's hormone-based. So are there drugs that work the other way? Yes, there are some as well. So the sort of things that might increase your, as I say, so drug stimulants like cocaine and other things, neurotransmitter, dopamine can make a real difference. Like if somebody has ADHD or has an overflow of dopamine and has a higher level of dopamine, if they have a high level of testosterone, and people who exercise on average have a higher sex drive. So that's the implication of that as well. But antidepressants can take us down. And there are arguments as to some foods can make a difference as well, like oysters and different things. It's minimal. It's not a huge difference. Contraception has a huge impact on sex drive, on the sort of contraception that people use as well. So what sort of contraception you use could have a big impact. So often the things that can make a difference are the tablets that we take, implants, injections, and the contraception ring. Do you know if HRT can make a difference? Yep, HRT can make a difference as well. In theory, with HRT, someone is having those hormones replaced. So in theory, their sex drive should actually get a little better. But of course, that doesn't happen for everybody. The thing that's really making the difference if somebody is taking HRT is the fact that they're going through the menopause. That's going to be the biggest impact because of the change in our hormones and in our bodies. So that's the biggest impact compared to, so HRT in theory should help make it a little better or stabilize it, but it doesn't always for everybody. Everything has an opposite effect. So some drugs affect people in a completely opposite way to what people say they do. So again, that can make a big difference. What can you do? What can you help yourself to increase? So we're going to come on to a few ideas. Sleep. Get some fucking sleep. Sleep well. Get sleep monitors. Get good apps. Get a better level of sleep. If you have a good amount of sleep, it goes hand in hand that your libido will increase. Now, by libido, I also genuinely mean our willingness to play. It makes a difference. Go and see a sex therapist or a sex educator. There's lots of arguments over the sort of sex educators and therapists you can actually see. Sleep is a starting point for so many things. It's the answer to near enough everything. But too much sleep is also an issue. If people are getting 12 hours a day, I'm not saying if they've got other problems, let's say if they've got depression, the lack of oxygen, the lack of motivation that comes in with that is really bad for your sex drive. So too much sleep isn't always a great thing either. That's a whole different story. Didn't I say once I was going to do a whole session on sleep hygiene, and I haven't yet? I'm sure I did once, didn't I? So that was asked for. So I'll try and remember that and put that in. So sleep hygiene, how we improve our sleep, how we get better. There are some aphrodisiacs that we turn around and say that can help. Herbal ones, different things that we can take. Exercise, testosterone therapy, estrogen therapy, whether it needs increasing or decreasing. You are not going to get these sort of therapies though if it is just for your sex drive. The NHS and people won't do that. That's something that I doubt would work for my daddy, as he has a condition that, if not medicated, will still be asleep 22 hours a day. Yes, exactly. So again, there are always exceptions to the rule that make a difference. Go and see a decent sex therapist or an intimacy therapist, or somebody that can try and help you in some way, shape or form. I think as well, when we look at this, for fuck's sake, what we've got to really think about is what is normal. Because when people compare drives, they say, that's normal, that isn't. Who here wants sex and play once a day? Who here wants sex and play once a week? Who here wants sex and or play once a month, once a year? The longest couple I've ever met who hadn't had any form of sexual intimacy was 11 years. Still very happily together. So it just depends. Everybody here will be different. HRT can help, but it can be getting the right cocktail. It can be persistent, and also testosterone for women can really make a difference, but it makes a massive fight to get it prescribed, especially in the UK. Made a huge difference to my partner's sex drive, and enjoyment of sex was so great for both of us. If you think your testosterone is starting to drop, you have a right to ask to be tested, and you have a right to fight for your right to access some form of testosterone therapy. So it is worth looking at. I have a client who has functional neurological disorder, and his testosterone levels are incredibly low, and it's impacting his motivation for life, let alone anything else as well, and his sex drive is negligible. But what is a normal sex drive? You know, it's interesting. So our sex drives can be really high, really low, and can be a real variety of things. There are all sorts of disorders that we can get as well. Goose, stop. So we can have FSIAD, which is female sexual interest and or arousal disorder, FSIAD. I think so. I think that's how it's spelled. That's a persistent lack of sexual desire, which isn't caused by medication or anything else as well. The sort of thing that person needs to go is they might get some medication, but they're probably going to be sent for some form of therapy. They're going to go and see a psychosexual psychotherapist, probably. Heather, would that be part of a regular metabolic panel, or something specific we need to ask for to have the hormones checked? Look, you're not going to get it easily. It depends where you live and who you are. If you feel unmotivated and you are a cis-born male and your sex drive is really low and you're not feeling too fantastic, it's really okay to say, can I have a general set of bloods? I don't feel okay. And please, can you include testosterone? You have a right to ask for those things. And if a doctor says, I have a client who has some issues with her skin, and she clearly needs either some antibiotics, that's what she wants to do, and or go on for a more higher therapy, whatever that means. Well, we know what that means, but she would have to go and see a dermatologist about it. And her doctor said, I don't really see what the problem is. It's not that bad. That doctor needs a fucking slap. Like it, and I just, it's so frustrating. Go and see another doctor. Doctor. Then we get normal levels, which might not be normal for you. Bell curves suck. They do, and there is a window of what are acceptable levels and what are not. So people also have compulsive sexual behavior. People can't control themselves sexually. There are all sorts of things. And of course, that can be a compulsive sexual behavior in and of itself, but can also come with things like Alzheimer's and strokes and different things as well. You can also have hyperarousal, where people are permanently in a state of arousal that we talked about earlier as well. So there's lots of different things that can happen. Right, so somebody said, what do we do? You fucking want sex all the time, or we never have sex. So what can you do? People get called all sorts of things like nymphomaniac or frigid. Actually, it's interesting, a lot of those words are actually based on women, which is a bit strange. But one of the most common reasons that a couple will see me if their relationship isn't in trouble, like let's say if someone's had an affair, or the polycule's going wrong, or something else as well, one of the most common reasons people come and see me is a disparate, different level in their sex drives. And what I'll get is their sex drive needs to come down and their sex drive needs to come up. Can you help? And do you know what the answer is? Not really. That's the truth. So like, if you have a really disparate level of sex drives where one is here and one is here, we might be able to do this. This is all about communication. And it might be about capacity medically. Look, at all sorts of ages, people can have sex. Incredible sex. I had a couple in their 80s who were fucking amazing, and they wanted to spice up their sex life. And we talked about we talked about different positions and managing things, because what you've also got to remember is the older you get with an erection, the erection level changes. In very young penis owners, the erection level can actually be quite upright, so sex can happen in different positions, and actually it drops during life. So actually the older the penis owner is, the more the erection starts to drop. Good old gravity. So keep in mind, normal is a matter of perspective. I think I have said that quite a lot. Like what is normal? It's in a society of crazy people, the same person is viewed as crazy. Like, what is even sane and what is crazy? And the word crazy is one that gets to me. This is fab. Aspirations. That is fab. Oh, what about the 80-year-olds? Amazing. They came back and they said to me, we found it, Deb. We know what we want to do now. And it's not what's that. He said, I really like to give her a good scene to in front of the mirror. Like, they were an awesome couple, and they just needed a lot of lube. Like, it's really cool. Somebody said privately, my sex drive is very high, because PGAD is through the roof. Can you share but not mention my name? So, okay, so let's get on with what we're talking about a little bit, about what can you actually do around sex drives. There are things you can do, and there's absolutely nothing you can do. So, and if those of you who don't know, it's all about PGAD is persistent genital arousal disorder. So again, it's horrific. So you've got somebody who's in a state of permanent arousal. Plus, people take some drugs that make them aroused, like your blue pills and stuff. Please be careful. Please be careful. Those things can go horribly wrong. But PGAD, it means somebody can be orgasming all the time or permanently turned on. And people go, that's cool, that must be really great. No, it's not. It can really impact people, because it's absolutely horrific for some people. So again, often drugs will come in, and some psychosexual psychotherapy will come in as well. Angel, yay, gravity has an impact on men as well. It absolutely does. So what do we need to talk about? So when we talk about those things, is what we need to ask is, what do you want from having sex? What does it mean from you having sex? And what does it mean from you having some kind of play or connection with somebody else? And then we need a conversation. Is this a joke? Okay, let's have a look. Jerry, Jake and Becky are an old couple dating. They decide tonight's the night in her apartment. Jake says, I've got to go to the bathroom. He goes to the bathroom, comes back out, and there's Becky standing on her head, legs akimbo, pants down, dress over her head. Becky, what are you doing? She says, I figured if you can't get it up, you could drop it in. Yeah. See, actually, and there you go. It's all about fucking approach, isn't it? I don't know how she could stand on her head, though. I've got to be honest. But yeah, it's all about approach, isn't it? So what we've got to work out is that, what do you want from sex or play? So if our drives are very different, we need to start communicating. Now, listen, if you have somebody with a medical condition, it isn't about dampening what you've got. It's about finding different ways of doing it. Can you masturbate together? Can you masturbate alone? Can you use toys? Can you open up your relationship? Can you see somebody else? Look for different options and look for the possibility. So for me, one of the questions I'm always going to ask is, what does it mean for you to have sex? And does sex just have to be PID, which is penis and vagina? And clearly not, if you've got queer people like me and other people as well. It's not always about penetration. However, for a lot of heterosexual couples, it really is. It's a fixation of, that's the way we have sex. Mutual masturbation, different ways. What do you want from sex? Is it about closeness? Does it mean that you are more likely to love me? Do we get enough affection outside of sexual contact? What does sex actually mean? What does play actually mean? And why do we want it, and why do we have it? If in play you have somebody who wants something so completely different to you, if like, I just want to tie you up all the time, and I wish you would just do this. Sorry, how do you fix that disparity? Actually, you can't. And what you've got to really think about there when it comes to kink is, there is a big difference between kink and lifestyle. There's a big difference between wanting kinky sex and someone being a fucking fetish hanger. I was talking to a client the other day who met someone who just stroked her hair the whole time and cut her hair. And he said, I might want to make you bald as well. Does he want her, or does he want her hair? Is the connection sexually with the hair there, or is it with the human being? So what is it we want? Heather, preach. I wish able-bodied community members, people in general, really would be considerate about actual limitations. Yeah, I agree. Lance, marriage hallway sex, saying fuck you as you pass each other in the hallway. Karen, agrees with Heather. So is it what you want? So even with desire differences, we can feel closer if we touch more, if we are affectionate, if we do something that we both want to do together, if we do a different version. I want to do this and I want to do this. Where is the middle? How can we find it? What do we need to do? And when we haven't had sex, what we've got to be very careful of or play is we need to build it up. Tantra can come into that. Creating desire can come into that by, there are so many tantra exercises that you can do, the way you sit together, the way you comment on each other's bodies, the way you talk, the way you share and talk about desire. Turn the fucking television off. Fucking put these things down. You know, change a lot of things that you're actually doing. Really sit with a person. Do you know what? Honestly, as well, let's say I want my man to or my woman to, whoever it is, because pretty queer, I see a lot of different people for different reasons sexually. So if you want your person, let's say, to help you hang the washing, okay, I'll tell you what, you hang the wash, I'll give you a blowjob while you're doing it. Why don't we do that? Why don't we bring sex into other things? You can reach it, it's better than me. It's better. So it makes a real difference. So let's think about that. I think we need to negotiate. I want sex once a week, you want sex once a month. What's in the middle? What can we do? What can help us? What does it mean here? Some people have sex every day. Some people have sex once every 10 years. Sex is on the decrease. We're having less sex than we ever had, which means everything's on the decrease. On average, people are having less sex than they ever have before. Now that was even before COVID. Now we've just had COVID, it's dropped even more. So the figures are distorted. However, it was also down before COVID as well. It made a real difference. I'm also going to tell you to schedule play. I know that's really unpopular, right? Why am I saying schedule play and schedule sex? When you first started dating, the people that you are seeing, you scheduled sex. I promise you did. Because when you see someone once a week on a Thursday or once a week on a Saturday, you had sex or you played. You agreed that that's when you had it and you had it in advance. Princess Alice, I've not had sex since 2018. I hope that's a choice. If you don't want sex, particularly as a man, it's very difficult to have sex. I agree. If you don't do it. I agree, Coca family as well. And however, if you want a relationship to work with somebody, you always go to, as from consent, we always go to the lowest denominating principle there, which says no. So we're only going here. And if I get a couple coming to me, or a throuple or a polyfamily saying they want more sex, there has to be some form of negotiation if both are willing to do it, and some form of communication. It's not just a question of no and no from both. Well, then there's no point being together anymore, is there? If someone comes in to me as a therapist and said, well, I'm not doing that and I'm not doing that, well, where are we going to go then? What do you want to do? Well, I want them to change. When couples come into therapy, they come in and they're very stuck in what they believe is right and their principles, especially around frequency, around sex and play. So we have to learn to communicate. We also have to learn to compromise. We also have to learn to negotiate. Somebody mentioned oming, which is orgasmic meditation. There are lots of different things we can do. Edging helps some people. Orgasmic meditation, if you don't know what they are, look them up. There's lots of great links that you can do. I can take it or leave it. I love having lots of cuddles and being looked after more, to be honest. Yes, that is a very common thing as well. But I was talking about scheduling. Why? Because when you met and you had that new relationship energy, you met on a Thursday and you had sex. Why not have sex on a Thursday every week? I don't do it because you've got to come here, so you can have sex after this, right? No, I'm kidding. Right, so you can have sex at different times. It's okay to schedule sex in. It doesn't mean it isn't fun. It doesn't mean it isn't exciting. But also, you don't make the effort anymore. A lot of people don't make the effort. When you used to go out with someone, you got dressed up, you did something, you maybe shaved, you didn't. Now we don't, like, because we live together or we're together all the time. So that's also a problem for that decrease in libido. When you're talking about when Heather says, right, intimacy has many forms, that's what I was talking about when I was talking about what is it you really want? Do you want intimacy? What does it look like? Does that mean a massage? Does that mean stroking your hair, brushing your hair? Does that mean that we go out together? Does that mean that we hold hands? I wrote a piece ages ago about the difference between intensity and intimacy, and a lot of people get those two things confused. We want intensity. Play brings intense feelings. really intense feelings around trust, around pain, around everything else as well. So, and a lot of people would prefer to have the intensity rather than the intimacy. Intimacy can look like a myriad of things. Some people turn around and say, yeah, but what if I don't fancy it and I'm not in the mood and it doesn't work for me? Actually, listen, no schedule has to be carved in stone or it's absolute. But what you will find, if sex is scheduled in, everyone tends to relax. And actually, our libido then goes up because we start to feel better. So the tension's decreasing. I'm not saying it's for everybody. I'm not saying it works every time. And it can make a real difference. For fuck's sake, have some intimacy and affection without just making it sexual. A lot of people, often more women than men, but not all the time, will roll their eyes. You watch them in the therapy room, will roll their eyes because they say, yeah, but every time they touch me, it leads to sex. I'm fucking fed up with it. I see that in queer couples. I see it in heterosexual couples. I see it a lot, depending on which person. Have some form of affection, some form of touching, some form of intimacy that doesn't always lead to sex, because that's nice too. And it's really nice. And also, I'm going to talk about getting the fucking jobs done in the house, right? If you live together or even if you don't live together. There's nothing worse than thinking I've got to go downstairs after this and I've got to empty the dishwasher or I've got to hang up a wash or whatever. Get all the fucking jobs done. Create a space for intimacy. Don't put the TV on. Sit and talk. When's the last time you had some form of intimacy that wasn't necessarily just about sex? However, if you do have a huge mismatch around sex or play, please go and see somebody who can really help you both get through it, because we get so entrenched. When you've got somebody who says, I want to play every day, I want to do this. Also, some people want sex without play, some people want play without sex. So again, we have to work that through. Well, in the UK, on average, people have sex once a week, roughly, although that is decreasing, for an average of around 7 minutes. That's the UK average. It's not that different in most companies. However, our sexual desire is an incredible, constantly evolving thing. By evolving, I don't mean it always increases or decreases. It's about how we balance that and how we manage our expectations. Jerry, your expressions. I haven't had sex in fucking ages, I tell you. I'm with you, Jerry.
It was the 7 minutes that got me.
In what way?
Just like, really? What can you do? Well, and I know what you can do in 7 minutes, but doesn't sound like an awful lot of time. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun. Fuck is what you have.
Yeah, because so what most people will do in that scenario when we talk about sex is PIV, and it's all about him being inside her, and it's all about him coming. That's how most people measure sex. That's the problem with it. Yeah, I agree with you. Helping chores is a huge deal for me. Complete it, sub. Lance says it's not have to tell partner it's not always about sex. Have wanted to just lay there holding each other, which for me just seemed out of character. Yeah, and it's really fucking important. Angel, in my past relationship, I've come to a stage where every touch made me go crazy and want sex. I couldn't touch anymore without wanting more because our sex drive was so different and I was so badly missing sex. Now, that in itself is an interesting issue, isn't it? So that then becomes about communication. We are so frustrated that we're not having sex that everything becomes about sex. It's all about working that out. Like when I'm working with people with erectile issues, erectile dysfunction, something that comes too quickly, too slowly, again, it's all about working it backwards and going back to the things that do work and starting slow and building up. Creating desire, creating tension, not creating too much desire in case somebody comes too quickly or gets too frustrated or the other person isn't interested. Look, at the end of the day, if your sex drive and your play drive are too disparate and it can't be fixed and you're not willing to work it out, then it's either put up with it or break up. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. How else do we do it? Like, it might be that you go and see somebody else. It might be that you masturbate more. It might be that you do all sorts of different things. But at the end of the day, that's what it can come down to for some couples. How much does it matter? Ssris is talking about extremely unsatisfying sex. I'm sure that's what you mean about the whole penis and vagina for 7 minutes. Kink, Smiley, thank you so much. Yes, intimacy is different than sex. They can coincide, but don't have to. I really agree. And it is about getting the jobs done. It is about helping each other. I think comparatively, what's interesting when we get involved in the sex scene, apparently one of the things that influences whether we find whether we're having a good sex life or not, or a good play life, is that if we think we're having more sex than the average person, we end up having more sex because we think we're better than them. That's quite an interesting piece of research, isn't it? Yeah, I'm doing it. I know what I'm doing. I'm better than you, and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, what's going on there? So, and also, I think when you look at when you look at social media and the impact that that has, that people are having sex all the time, people are happy all the time. Are they? I mean, let's look at the Kardashians, shall we? They look so happy, don't they? Absolutely not. You know, do you know what? I tell you what, I'm going to give you FOMO and I'm going to raise you JOMO, right? The joy of missing out. Right. We don't have to have the fear of missing out. We can have the joy of missing out. Make it a fucking choice. I'm always going to raise you JOMO instead of FOMO every time I hear that. Lance says, Angel, that's more in character for me, wanting it all the time due to lack of it. So just wanting contact versus sex. But then what we've got to be careful is we keep wanting it because it's new relationship energy and that drops off. Jerry says, as people know, I see escorts from time to time, and I always book a minimum of 2 hours because I want more than just a chance to come inside somebody. If you actually speak to most sex workers, what they will share with you is often people do not want sex at all. What they want is a cuddle. And a lot of people just want that. They don't want to come, they just want to fucking cuddle. You've also got to watch stress. I didn't mention that earlier, actually. God, why didn't I mention that? So, and the other thing that really impacts our drives is stress. When we're really stressed, we either want sex to relieve it, I can't believe I didn't mention that, or we want no sex because we're so highly stressed. So that's a really big, important aspect. So we can burn out, we can have a lot of stress, and we cannot feel good. You can also think that quality is more important than quantity. If you have good sex and you have it every so often and you really enjoy yourself, that's okay too. I think we can also suffer shame, and also we can suffer trauma because of sex. So again, I didn't talk about that earlier. That is a whole other session when it comes to trauma. So that would be a completely separate issue. Leave your phone at home and go shopping. You will feel invincible. Yeah, do you know, it's really good for you. Just put it in. What will happen? So you've got to talk about this stuff. If you don't talk about it, it's not going to work. And as I said, calendar is really helpful, putting it in. Also, turn around and do something exciting. Go to the ABC of sex. Do sex dating. So it doesn't always have to be about sex. I mean, like someone says, oh, hey, or is that for anal? Not necessarily. It can be for a lot of things. You know, you can do alphabet. You can do different things. You can play with dice. You can really make a difference. Princess Alice, oh my God, yes, I had such a bad month when I finally saw Daddy again. All we did was snuggle and look after each other. Yeah, it's really important. However, if sexual intercourse, P and V, lasts for an average of 5 to 7 minutes, you're missing out on all sorts of other pleasure. You know, licking someone, touching someone, tasting someone, foreplay, toys, different things. Build it up, make it good. Turn the fucking television off. I don't know about you, but the amount of videos on FetLife and things like that that have the most awful TV in the background or whatever, you've got to be really careful because you can drift in and out of the situation and you're like, what was that? And that's really bad for us. If you find your mind drifting and you're doing those things where you're saying, so I need 3 onions on the shopping list, whatever, you aren't engaging with your body. You need to step back and change the way you're having sex and what you're doing. It's really important. So I am a big believer in the relationship is foreplay. Esther Perel says foreplay starts when the last orgasm ended. I disagree with her because sex isn't just about orgasms. Sexual contact isn't just about orgasms. So for me, the whole relationship is foreplay. We need to be ready for pleasure. We need to be open for pleasure. We need to be open for play. And again, at the end of the day, it's still going to come down to if you have a massive difference in sex drive and you don't open up your relationship or you don't compromise, your only choice is to then break up or accept it for what it is without destroying each other and moaning about it. Angel says to Lance, it can happen and it's a big deal. Communication is key. In my marriage, communication didn't help. He was not open to finding compromising or solutions. It's bad when one's just be left alone with the problem. Well, we don't have to be left alone with the problem because we still have the choice, and the choice is to go, to make a change. But so many people are frightened of that. It's not a bad thing. If somebody won't talk, it doesn't help. So there are challenges when we've got somebody who is either the person with the higher sex drive and the person suffering from that because they oh god, they want sex, but it's also really bad for them as well because they do want sex and it's not pleasant for somebody. So we worry about why someone's sex drive is different to ours, what's happening. And Sunshine says, I sympathise, I'm there myself at this time. We still do have the option to leave. Look, we can watch someone else play something. We can watch porn together. We can watch videos. We can create porn content. We can do a lot of things. Coca says it can be easier to stay than to risk trying to start again. For sure, it's a real risk that you'll end up alone and you won't feel okay. It's harder to leave when you get older. It's different. It's not harder necessarily. It's different. Yeah, financial issues always come into it. Listen, I'm somebody who got divorced and was completely fucked over financially. That's okay. I understand that, but I still managed. And there are ways of getting help and there are things that you can do and you have a lot more rights than you think. And the problem is those things take time, for sure. I left at 58 hard, but the best thing I ever did. Yeah, and you've often said that and backed that up. So if you want to do things to try and increase as well, don't forget to go voyeurism. Have a good time with that. What's someone else doing? What are they doing? I don't mean look through someone else's letterbox. I do mean your partner. You can set up cameras in your home. Cameras in your home can be really fun. They're a really good way of just giving your partner a login. Yes, of course, everything can be hacked. Take your own risk. And to watch them if we're into voyeurism, or for example, I'm going to turn the camera on to masturbate for me or something while I'm at work and I'm watching it on my phone. Try and increase things, try and start sexting. And of course, please be careful, even with play, because I said this last time, you can go through fucking customs and someone has a right to look at your phone. So again, please be careful. We come to this world alone and we will leave alone. This is what I told myself when I left. Look, my mum and dad have been married for, how old am I? 58. So they were married for 60 years and my mum died in May and my dad is alone. Even when you're with someone, it doesn't guarantee that you'll be with someone. Not at the end, because everybody fucking dies. And that's what people forget. Or somebody gets very ill and you're left anyway because you're left with somebody who isn't present in many ways, shapes or forms. So burner phones for travel. Yeah, for sure. You know, make sure that you plan things and you plan big things. It could be going to a sex party. It could be going to a play party. It could be going to a play event. That can be good. Please make sure you use fantastic toys with remotes. Like iPhone, that you can do all sorts of different remote play now, especially with phones. When look, I'm a therapist. If I'm sitting in a room with somebody and I've got a remote control vibrator in me, there is nothing more unprofessional, and it's not going to happen. But if I'm sitting at home making a spaghetti bolognese, turn it on. It's quite good fun. So you can have some control over them. Love Sensor, brilliant. Honestly, there are shit tons of really good toys and different things that people can play, but nothing will replace talking about it, even if it feels really difficult. And if the person won't talk to you, it becomes, well, we talk and we see a professional or I'm out. And we have to make choices, or we have to live with what it is that we're going through. Anybody got any more questions about kink drive and sex drive at all, and disparity? The key is talk. The key is see to someone. Seeing someone can really help, because instead of you both being entrenched, you've got the therapist, the sex therapist, the couples therapist, the polytherapist is to talk. They will help you and they will find things differently. Lance, the best sex toy ever invented, rest between your ears. The brain is the biggest turn on for most of us, because it's always the thoughts and the hormones that we're having and creating. Tits up, my ex-husband would find me masturbating and apologise and leave the room. Yeah, that's not unusual at all. I have a client, when she masturbates, if her husband walks in, he tells her that she's disgusting, that it's hideous. So, you know, I recommended them to go and see a couples therapist, which they've also done. And actually their relationship is getting better, but he also finds it disgusting when she squirts. So she's a squirter and he thinks that is not normal. And it's absolutely awful. Jerry says, I agree. I have a love sense. I have a lovance, dommy, an edge, and a hush, and the app. Yeah, we can have a lot of fun with all of these things. Okay, so should we talk about cuckqueaning and cuckolding? Anyone here a cuck queen or a cuckold? Rare, actually. That's not true. Male cuckolds are more common. Female cuck queens are more rare. So I'm a wannabe cuckold. Okay, I really appreciate that. Do you know why? You don't have to share either. So I'm curious about it. Curious about cuckolding or cuck queening or the whole package. My partner Mel wants me to cuckold him. Yep, that's very difficult, isn't it? Because if you don't want to, you don't want to. Yes, so cuckolding, the original term. So I'm going to refer to my writing on this. Yes, I have a few ideas why I want this. Yes, so it's interesting to understand. I have a huge writing all about cuck queening, the basics, and me that I wrote a long time ago. So cuck queening is on the increase again, slightly for women. So what's the difference? My wife wants to be one. It's amazing how nervous that makes my own subconscious. Why, Mark? Just Mark. What are you nervous about? And clearly you don't have to say here if you don't want to share. I'm just curious. Right, so what's the difference? What is a cuckold and a cuck queen? So a cuck queen isn't as common as you actually think. They're quite Dory, this was awesome, but my computer's about to die. You're welcome. Die gracefully. Have good fun. See you later. So cuck queen is definitely gaining popularity. I definitely see more of it, especially when people start talking about stags and vixens, and we'll go into what all these names mean and how it works. However, what I also see is a lot of women wanting to be a cuck queen because they think it's what their partner wants. So that, you know, that's wanted, that whole bi-curious, bi-angle. So, so there's a lot of danger in that potentially. Mark, fear of her not being able to cope and then me being rejected by her. You've got to make sure that somebody wants this. So male cuckold, female cuck queen, basically that's the truth. So a cuckold is a very old thing where they used to have these big cages that would go in wives or around wives' heads, and it would depress the tongue so they couldn't talk. So cuckolding used to be about humiliating a man, putting him down. So we're talking about heterosexual, heteronormative, all those things from the past, from many hundreds of years ago. So a man who was cuckolded, it wasn't always sexual. It started with he was badly spoken to, she was in charge when she shouldn't be. We're talking about hundreds of years ago, we're not talking about today. So and that made a difference. And then cuckolding also became more about actually that where her cuckolding and cuck queening is very much based on husband and wife, actually, if you look at the history, not couples or throuples or anything else as well. So that's the history, it's what it's based on. So a cuckold would be when she would sleep with somebody else and make him a cuckold. And if you listen to musicals like Hamilton, it even says, you made the wrong man a cuckold. And because it's a very old phrase that used to be that meant that she slept with somebody else. Cuck queening is where the wife sleeps with somebody else instead of the man, but they do have slight differences. Okay, so it's not common. So just because the things that really matter to me around cuck queening and cuckolding are all about coercion and consent. A lot of people who want to be cuckolds can really push their partners into it. A lot of people, cuck queens, can really push their partners into it. And we've got to be really careful about that because the other partners can push the other people into it as well. There's many a threesome that you hear about, or a foursome, or somebody happening where someone phones up and says, or, they're going at them with a baseball bat, chucking them out of their house, doing all sorts of extreme things. Please make sure that everybody wants this, that it isn't coerced. So some people say it's the husbands. I'm going to stick with husbands and wives just for a second for the explanation, that it's the man that wants it. So what I wrote in my piece was, so I'm going to refer to my piece. So excuse me if I feel like I'm reading because I've already done this quite a lot. So it's an interesting, it's already been written because this is my fetish. Jacob, that's what I want. Kind of partner that's into this rather. Yeah, so it's really important to find a partner into it rather than trying to force a partner into it because it doesn't always work. So what is a cuck queen? Some define it as a wife who's compliant in her fetish for her husband's cheating or adultery. So I'm going to comply with it because you're cheating anyway. So it's the female equivalent of a male cuckold. The basic definition is the wife of an unfaithful man for cuck queen. Cuck is a reference to a cuckoo. So it's the cuckoo's nest where the bird usurps somebody else and chucks them out. So that's where cuck comes from. It's cuckoo's nest. Queen, Q-U-E-A-N, is often used to be derisory about older women. It's from the 13th century. So cuck queen, Q-U-E-A-N, is the older woman who is not as sexually attractive. And it means anything from old to barren, and queen was also spelt CWEEN as well. So the idea is that the man goes off and has a younger, hotter, sexier model, and the old, barren, dried up hag is left at home. So I'm that old, barren, dried up hag. That's the principle. It's the comparison. That's not the way it is anymore, but that's where it came from. There are no fucking rules when we talk about disability as well. We've talked about everything else as well. There are no rules on how to do this. You need to work out what works for you, and you need to work out how to negotiate it. However, we also really need to agree on this one around safety, around limits, and around what's going to happen and what it means and what it looks like. I'm confused when people approach me with intentions to be a cuckold. I think it's possible in established relationships only. Yes, however, what that person is really asking for, Harada, is some form of humiliation fetish at that moment. So actual cuckoldry and actual cuckqueaning is actually about being married or in a long-term relationship or with somebody. When somebody says, I want you to compare me to somebody else, yes, they might use that as a cuckold, so they can be made a cuckold, but the principle for proper cuckolding, fuck me, that makes it sound elite. It's not quite what I mean. But for traditional cuckolding and traditional cuckqueaning, it's very much about doing it outside of a relationship. That other person will call it that, but actually they're much more into humiliation and comparisons. Please make sure you really know what's going to go wrong or what could go wrong. As Mark was just saying there, you've got to be so careful that how do we know? What if they can't cope with it? And you don't know till you try. So one of the things I would always agree with a couple who are going to go and start doing this, or a throuple or whatever, or with anyone else as well, is what we're agreeing is we're going to try it, and it may bring up some serious issues, but we're going to work through the issues together no matter what happens. That's one of the really important agreements that makes a difference. Perhaps we could use the term pedantic cuckolding for doing within a marriage. Yeah, I mean, I'm just talking about that from that perspective because it just makes it easier. Look, what does cuckqueaning mean? For some people, it means just someone going out and cheating, picking up a one-night stand. For others, it's a regular partner, cuckolding and cuckqueaning. And that person, if they're female, understand that this is cis-based again, so it can offend some people. There isn't a term in the middle yet, but let's find out. Let's make up our own one, maybe. So if you have a man coming in to sleep with somebody, they're often called a bull. If you have a woman coming in to sleep with somebody, they're often called the cuck cake, as in cuck cake. So it might be that people get sexual pleasure from it. It might be that they want humiliation. They might get compassion, the love of the other person having pleasure. And they might also just get off on the fact that it feels nice, and they like the jealousy that they're feeling at the time. Because we can also twist jealousy, we can invert it to be a sexual pleasure. And that's the way some people handle it. For me, one of the aspects that people don't get until I talk about it is, for me, it's something about the person coming back to me and choosing me at the end of it as well. So you can psychoanalyze me for hours over that one. I like humiliation over it. I like some compassion, and I like the coming home afterwards. Does cuck overlap with hot wife? Yes and no. So cuckqueaning is about the intent of it. So hot wife, stags, vixens, they're not doing it. It's more about just watching and having fun and being involved. It's just a more modern way of saying it. However, I would argue that a hot wife, a stag, a vixen are looking for the sexual pleasure more than anything. Some cuckqueaning, some cuckoldry often has some aspect of humiliation or derision involved in it. And also cuckqueaning and cuckolding will often involve the other person not being physically involved, or maybe not even knowing about it. Stags and vixens often tend to watch or be involved, not always, but they tend to hear about it. Again, cuckqueaning doesn't always do the same. I think what you've got to say to somebody, are you a stag? Are you a vixen? Are you a bull? Are you a cuckold? Are you a cuckquean? And what the fuck do those things mean to you? Because that's the most important thing. Hello, Viral. Hello, human beings. So it might be that it's it's lovely. She loves the compersion, or he loves the compersion, or they love it. It might be that. Some people love recordings, videos, different things. Please make sure you get consent over all of that as well. That's really important. It could be that somebody wants humiliation and degradation over it. So it's comparative. They are bigger, they are fatter, they are smaller, they've got bigger boobs, they've got smaller boobs, they've got a bigger cock, they've got a smaller cock. So it just depends on all these different things. As to what it's going to be like. It might be that they're involved in the conversations beforehand. So like, for example, you set up a group chat where they both have a go at her or him or them. It might be that they are involved it's derisory in some way, or it might be, I can't wait. It might be that they're a fluffer. It might be that they get the person dressed. It might be that they lick them out first or suck them off first and get them prepared and ready. It can be a lot of things. The point is, yes, I want to be a fluffer. Yes, exactly. So it's the preparation for somebody as well. So that can be that it's humiliating, or that can be that it's compersive and that's about the pleasure. It just depends on your take on it, and that's what you've got to work out. Often in cuckqueaning, the dominant partner is the one that will go off and sleep with somebody else, and cuckoldry as well. So that can be in DS as well. It depends on how you take it. I'm also going to say, as Mark just said, his fear, sorry about the dog, is actually the fantasy is very different to the reality. The fear of things going wrong, what can happen? Does someone prefer sex with somebody else? What does it mean? What's the implication for you two? Is it just different? So you've got to be really careful. And it's so different to cheating, because cheating in this is about intent. It's about involvement. It's about consent. It's about making sure that you've got people coming in. And again, as I said, if you do any form of recording to show to the cuckold or the cuck queen, that it's very different. Yes, I hear that a lot with cuck. Fantasy is dissimilar to reality. Yes, you've got this wonderful image in your mind of how it goes. And that's the problem with fantasy versus reality. I've got a whole workshop written on that. They're very different. So you've got to be very careful about that one. Chloe, is that a private message? Because if it is, I won't read it out because I've just said your name. So I really apologize. My bad. So I'm not sure. I think you've just got to be very, very careful. So if you've got MS, you've got control. If you've got manipulation going on potentially. So please be careful about that. You've also got to be very careful about, God, this is a huge emotional roller coaster for most people most of the time. And it's really difficult to figure out, do you both really want to do this? And what are the implications of doing it? Because essentially it could also break a couple up. And that's horrific if it does. And that's not funny. So you can watch, you can be passive, you can be part of it. One of my things that I really like is if I'm tied to the bed and they're doing stuff above me. Sometimes I just want to be downstairs cooking dinner. Sometimes I want to be doing different things. It just really varies about how it works. And sometimes I just want to be doing some housework and getting on with life, and they just tell me all about it. So it really varies. Is it different to just a threesome? Yes, it is. It has a different intent. It does have a different intent because it's either compersion or humiliation. And I would argue a lot of the time, cuckqueaning and cuckolding do have the humiliation element. So it's not the same as a threesome. For me, a threesome is just about having sex with 3 people more often than not. Cuckolding, cuckqueaning has a slightly different intent. So it's very important to work the difference out. So I think that really matters. Also, our imagination can kill us. If your partner is doing something with somebody else, your imagination is way worse, which is why I like it. Is way worse than what they're actually doing, or way better than what they're actually doing. So you've really got to be careful about that. So in a threesome, all are involved. In the cuck situation, one is excluded. Often they might be tied to a chair, they might be watching. It could be that we expect them to sexually clean up afterwards. It could be that we expect them to come and suck someone off, lick someone out, finish someone out, clean someone up. So that, that can come into it as well. Jacob, yes, the earlier comment, I'd prefer to start cuckolding early in the relationship rather than potentially ruining an established relationship. And of course it could really ruin a potential new relationship. There can be a lot of anger. I've basically always been of a stag vixen mindset, not feeling jealous and having some degree of pride if a girlfriend or my wife were to be sexually poly. However, a few years ago, I reacted to some steroid eczema cream and became a submissive, and my mindset became cuckold hot wife. It then generated a huge rush to fantasize about my wife responded to the suggestion from me by asking, "You want me to share me with another man?" Yeah, very different opinion. No, the moment I realized she was reluctant, it immediately stopped being exciting or fun. Yeah. I'm going to write a post soon that a certain website has been highlighted to my attention. Can't remember the name of it. Fuck, I've got it. I'm just going to pick up my phone. I can't see it without anything. I've got a picture of it. Where is it? A website was brought to my attention, and it's a horrific website because basically what it is, it's where you God, where is it? It's where you send pictures of your wife or partner to be rented, often women, without their knowledge or consent. And it's where people say, we've got you now, we've got your wife, we know who you are, and all that sort of shit. It's called temp.exposed. And I have such an issue with that sort of thing. Like, I mean, it's revenge porn. It's so non-consensual. So when you really understand that somebody really doesn't want something, it can absolutely ruin the principle. So fantasies sometimes need to stay fantasies. What's going to happen? You also have to think about the risk. You have to think about the risk about STIs, STDs, whatever you want to call them. You have to think about the risk of pregnancy. You have to think about the risk of all sorts of different things as well. So also the disparity. Where the fuck do you find someone? How do you do? One of the things I spoke about was when you look at FetLife and you look at some of the figures, 3,600 odd people are curious about cuckqueaning. However, only 813 people are curious about being a cupcake. That's a big disparity. Where do you find your unicorn? How does that work? It's not as easy as you think. And if you look at the gender split and the way that works as well, finding a third can be easy and can be really complex. Like, it is quite a difficult one to work out. So we really have to think about that as well. So please be careful about where you find someone and what you do. I'm working with a couple at the moment, and it's very funny. He said something this morning that was really relevant to me. He was saying about when he was young, and that how immature he was. But at the same time, he's talking about a couple of women that he'd been chasing are of that age. So I made the comparison. I said, it's interesting. You talk about how young you were when you were that age, and yet you're looking at women of that age. And he went, oh, like he saw it. It was quite interesting. And, you know, think about who you're bringing into your relationship. Think about the impact of it, because you're looking for difference. Is that person emotionally capable? Can that person not get involved? What does it mean? I know, Jerry, it's fucking horrific, isn't it? I'm going to write about it soon. A few cupcakes have sex with lots of couples. Numbers disparity. No, they don't. They don't. So some cupcakes actually. So you get some who do this quite vindictively. So what you find on a lot of sex sites is where you find some women who actively go out to find married men and fuck them and fuck the wife. Not fuck the wife, literally. Fuck the wife. Who cares? And that's a very different approach to somebody who actively wants to be a cuck queen. I'd not heard of this before, Debs, but I've just found a Reddit thread about it. What's that about? The exposed bit, cinders, or something else? Oh, don't. I'm going to write about it. So yeah, it's fucking hideous, but hey. So cuck queening is different. It's all about consent. It's all about working in a different way. So for me, I prefer videos and not being present, because my imagination does a lot more to me than anything else. And it's a very different thing. When you actually see it, it can be really disappointing, or it cannot quite be how you want it. When I hear a recording of them with somebody else, I want to hear comparison. I want to hear the sex going on. And at the same time, I want to hear of, you know, like, gosh, you feel so much better. You're tighter. This is the best sex I've had. I like the humiliation as part of it. And if I'm actually with a person, this has happened before over the years. Remember, I've been doing this for nearly 40 years. Sometimes you watch their face and you think they're not really enjoying it. It's just not for me. So that can ruin. That's one of the differences as well. Cinder's worse. It's a thread of posts where men are sharing images of their partners without their consent. I can share the link, but it's not nice. people consent whether they click on the link or not. Don't get me started. This particular website is all what it's for. It's just horrific, but something else. And exposed, it's because the website keeps going down and people find out and then they try and put it somewhere else. How does this, right? So this is a big thing, isn't it? How does this not affect your self-esteem? I was going to come on to that one. For me personally, and for other people, some people will twist jealousy or twist humiliation into something sexual, which feels good. Now, you can make it work on your self-esteem to be positive and or to be negative. However, what I said, if you listen to what I said at the beginning, is what it does for me is when the person comes back, they choose me over the other person. So I'm still loved and still wanted, or with the other person, if I'm polyamorous. Does it take a strong person to be a cuckold or a cuck queen? It does. No, it can take a very damaged one or a very weak one. It depends on the person. People can be doing this for all sorts of reasons. It doesn't mean they're good reasons. You know, we get into habits, don't we, about sex and everything else as well. So it's not always a strong person. You've got to watch that the kink doesn't overtake the relationship. Cinder, shit, I scrolled down about 2 screens and then closed my browser. Yeah, no, honestly, don't look unless you really, I'm going to write about it. Anyway, it's a separate subject. So it's something to really think about, cuck queening and cuckolding. You've got to really want it, and you've got to start to really sit down and talk about the consequences, because it can lead to a breakup, it can lead to a poly relationship, it can lead to damage. If you have a crack in your relationship and you start doing this, that crack will just get wider and bigger. I can guarantee it. So you need to feel pretty okay about each other and the things that you're doing, and to have that capacity to communicate about it makes a real difference. Anyone still interested in cuckolding and cuck queening? Like, you know, as soon as I know, Jerry, these things really both bother me as consent is absent. I think you meant bother instead of both. Yes, I know. If other people are clicking on it, I'll be writing about it soon, because it horrified me when somebody said. However, I also understand that it's a real thrill for people. Yes, I'm still a wannabe cuck. Yeah. So it's about finding the right person. And there aren't that many people who are actually into cuckolding as you think. It's a smaller percentage, and cuck queening is even smaller. So it's about finding the right people. It's not that easy to do. You could end up with a cuckold and a cuck queen together. That could be quite interesting, because both will want their partner to sleep with somebody else. But of course, as a cuck queen, me, I don't particularly want to sleep with other people. I want you to sleep with other people. But then I've got to be really careful that I don't force that, because it's coercion. Oh, you should ask her out. Why don't you do something? That's because of my sexual interest. And that can be really dangerous in a relationship as well. It has to be, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't work for me at all, because it's not something I want to do. It's all about making sure that you're consenting to the right thing and not coercing somebody else into it. Look, we all coerce to a certain extent. We all want our party to do something. Tempest, not interested in cucking, but okay with poly. Very different headspace. I agree, different headspace, very different, because of the way we feel about it and the approach that we have. So I can be poly. However, when I am poly, so I'm ambi-amorous, which means I can do monogamy or poly. It just depends on the situation or the person. My last long-term poly relationship, which was 10 years with one person. No, was it 10? 9 or 10 years. And the one particular person I'm thinking of was, so her, as the 3 of us were together, I think for about 4 years, and her and I were together, even though I was still with him, but she broke up with him. We were still together for another few years after that. And then we stayed friends for quite a long time. She got married in the grounds of my last house. That makes me sound very pretentious. It was a very pretentious house. And things like that. So we were very close. And I think we even slept together the night before her wedding. She slept in my bed and chucked my partner out at the time. And her husband knew, like, this is a poly situation. This wasn't, you know, it was very open. But however, for me, as part of it, it was definitely used as a form of cuck queening as well. So sometimes there were comparisons, Deb, get out of the bed, I'm not sleeping with you tonight, I just want her. That sort of stuff. So it was used in that way. So the two can go in. It can work. Again, it's all about communication. It's all about consent. Okay, quite a lot today. Anyone got any questions about anything we've covered today, or anything else they would like covered in the future? Or I was going to do sleep, and I haven't, so I really apologize about that. But next week we are going to be doing predators on the scene, predators in communities. What can we do? What options do we have? We're going to be talking about being a mentor and mentoring, what that means, because that's a question I've been asked. And we're going to be talking about submission and self-care. The week after, we have male chastity, locked males and castration fantasies, and we'll also talk about sleep hygiene. I'll add that one in. So if you want another subject, just let me know and we'll cover them. I'm into male chastity. I think you mean chastity. Which date is that one? Which one? So next week, next Thursday, is the one about predators, mentoring and submission and self-care. And then the week after will be male chastity, being locked and castration fantasies, and sleep hygiene. So again, we can be all of these things. Is this one being recorded and put on YouTube? They all are, I think. Even if they go wrong, there's always a backup and they eventually go on. So yes, we're doing different things sometimes, but can we talk about ABF sometimes? We can. So yeah, so I can add that one as well. So yes, I will do that. People saying nice things, thank you very much. So I will cover those, and if you want anything else, let me know. And if it's something I don't know about, here's my ego. I haven't met anything yet that I don't know quite a lot about in kink, because I've been kinky for 40 years and it's my job. It's not my job. I'm a therapist. I work with couples and I work with kink and sex and all sorts of things. And anyway, okay, so thank you very much for your time. As always, if you are a therapist and you want a CPD certificate, just drop me a line. Hang on, let me try and make that. Oh, hello, Cara. Thank you for your first time. Thank you for this enjoyable morning discussion. So if you want a CPD certificate, this is my email address. Please don't use it for anything else, because it is my email address. Look how trusting I am. So yes, just ask me about that. Not a problem. I'll just send you a CPD certificate for 2 hours. I'm not going to miss another one. Oh, thanks. They do very weekly, and there are a shit ton on YouTube that I've done before. So, but they're always as casual as this, and I don't tend to talk very technically or psychotherapeutically, because it's not so good. There's a bookload of stuff on FetLife. Angel, no. What did Angel ask me? Have you wrote a book? No. I am, however, going to write, and what I'm going to use my writing as well, so I'm going to write a living book. And what I mean by that is I'm going to write a book that starts with, are we born this way? And then the impact of our upbringing. And then I'm going to go into how we find kink, what we can do, the things we need to learn, body, first aid, you name it, everything. And then how to set up a session, how to do things, how to interact, how to communicate, how to do that, and then all the way through to ending relationships and everything. So I'm going to do everything I know in every way, and I'm going to make this living book that you can sign up for a low cost. But every time a new piece of information comes out, I'm going to add it in. That's what I want to do. So it's like a living book website thing, which is everything to do with kink from beginning to end. So all the research, neuroscience, everything else I can.
You have to write your transgenerational epigenetic paper first.
Oh, my PhD, one day.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not doing it. So, but however, I will have, it won't be an actual book, it'll be a living book, so it'll be a website thing, but the transgenerational epigenetic scripting of submissive will be in there. So I will look at it.
That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
Exactly. So that will be in there. Open fruit bingo. Thank you very much. And we will also have what's around the bingo. We will also have what's my other one I want to do? Retroactive withdrawal of consent as a moral shame principle. So yeah, PhD by publication. So yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? So yes, so please, I've got nearly 600 writings on FetLife. So I mean, FetLife doesn't cause you anything to join or to be part of. It doesn't have any malware or spamware. You can turn it all off. So you can find a lot of writing and bits and pieces. Okay, so anyway, please do an Audible. I rarely settle to read these days. I could make it Audible as well. God, I have a podcast already signed up for as the Kink Shrink. I just don't have time to do it. But what I would do if I if I ever get around to doing the podcast, is I would put these on every week, and then I would read one of my writings every week as well. So there would be 2 or 3. Start there and you'll be able to.
No, you have a volunteer to help you with that when you do it.
Well, yeah, okay, so let's get started. Let's do a podcast and do it. So that would be called the Kink Shrink as well. So I've got time for all these things. I really have. Anyway, thank you all very much for coming. Yeah, people do love there's a lot of kinky podcasts out there, but I think often they're shared, and I think it's important to back up with knowledge, and I think it's important to back up with science and proof and lots of things as well, which I am very much into. So for me, they're not just about chatting. Anyway, thank you very much. If you do want to support me, you don't have to. You are welcome to buy me a coffee, KOFI, which is a website, and I've got a Patreon, and you don't have to. You can still come here for free anyway. It makes no difference. So I have those as well. So we will talk about those things as well. So good night or good morning, whatever it is for you. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your support, and I'll see you next week if you want to come along as well. Thank you very much. Wank away. See you later. It's 5 a.m. Have a good day. See you later. Bye. Be careful in the storm if you're in the UK. Bye.